I'm going to try and give you a bit more detail about photosynthesis without going crazy detailed. So as we've said before, photosynthesis is about taking inorganic molecules and in the presence of sunlight converting them into organic glucose. The raw ingredients are carbon dioxide and water. The products are glucose and oxygen. So it's about fixing carbon and it requires sunlight to be able to do that. We've got two types of reactions. Light reactions or light dependent reactions. The whole process of that is about light capture or energy capture. So let's just say that the most important part of this is about energy capture. So we're capturing energy from the sun and we're converting it into chemical energy that is then used to drive the light independent reactions to fix carbon. So the most important thing we've got here is that we're fixing carbon. Alright, so let's just very briefly talk about the process of energy capture. It occurs on the thylakoid membrane. This here is our thylakoid membrane, and it involves the energy from the sun. So this is sunlight. Energy from the sun excites electrons and puts them into a high energy state. So the electrons that were in the chlorophyll become excited into a high energy state, and they step down through a series of reactions, an electron transport chain. We need to, so we've ejected those electrons in, and they're stepping down an electron transport chain, and we need to actually replace the electrons in the chlorophyll. So we do that through splitting of water. So we've got water, and that splits to produce oxygen, and that oxygen is then a waste product. And what we also produce is protons, because of our hydrogens, the electron in our hydrogen atom replaces the electron in the chloroplast. So what we've got left is a hydrogen ion, or obviously a number of hydrogen ions. So if we continue that process, we end up with more and more hydrogen ions or protons on this side of the thylakoid membrane, and so we've got a concentration gradient. So once we've got a concentration gradient, these hydrogen ions are going to move back to the other side of the thylakoid space along the concentration gradient, and when they do that, they turn ATP synthase. And by turning ATP synthase, the energy from that converts ADP and inorganic phosphate into ATP, which then that ATP is the energy we require to go across to drive the dark reactions or the light independent reactions. But I also mentioned another one, and that was NADPH. Now, so NADP is it's an electron or energy carrier. So it's waiting on this side, on this, I'll give you another colour. So we've got NADP waiting up here to accept electrons and the protons. So we then have NADPH being produced, and that also goes across to as an energy carrier to drive the dark reactions or the light independent reactions. So in the light independent reactions, this occurs in the stroma, so the liquid inside the chloroplast, and the raw ingredient for it is carbon dioxide. It requires the presence of an enzyme called rubisco, and along the way we have energy inputs from ATP, which then becomes the ADP and the inorganic phosphate, and so that energy then is used to drive the reactions of the Calvin cycle. So not only is it ATP but it's also the NADPH as well. So these molecules then will go back to the thylakoid to be recycled and continue to be transporting, or to be converted back to ATP, to their high energy state, and the cycle continues. So the actual product of the Calvin cycle is a molecule called 3PG, and that's the precursor of glucose. So we need to have a number of turns of our Calvin cycle to actually produce glucose. But the take-home message is our light reactions, or the light-dependent reactions, that occur in the thylakoid membrane are involved in energy capture, and then we've got our light independent reactions that occur in the stroma, and they're involved in fixing carbon. And so just by way of a final summary, so our H2O is a reactant because it's required to donate these electrons and the protons required for the light dependent reaction, and this is where we get our product of water from the light reactions here. Okay, so that's where we get our water from, our oxygen from, is from splitting the water. And then of course our other reactant was carbon dioxide, and that's required for our light independent reactions. And our final product is going to be glucose, but that is going to take a little bit more work here, another couple of turns of the Calvin cycle to actually produce our glucose molecule, but it occurs from fixing our carbon.